I think most of us at some point in our business will walk around with our foot on our own throats, choking off the growth, right? And we twist ourselves in a knot to do that. But we just don't hire well, and and you don't have enough people to execute.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest on this episode is the amazing and super talented entrepreneur, Angelique Rewers. She's the founder of Bold House, which helps small businesses grow, scale, and land big corporate clients. She's an empowerer of women in business and advises entrepreneurs on best practices in order to grow. She's known as a fierce champion for small business owners by Business Digest, the undisputed champion at helping small businesses land big clients by Inc. magazine, and the Enterprising Woman of the Year by Enterprising Women magazine. Angelique's expertise has been tapped as an advisory board and committee member, respectively, for Space for Humanity and the United Nations Women Humanitarian Peace Fund. An incredible episode for those of you who want to learn and grow your business. You're not going to want to miss this one. Check it out. Angelique, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
So before we begin, and we have a lot to discuss, why don't you tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and I guess your background, your story, how you got started.
Oh man. So this is an interesting year for us because we rebranded this year into Bold House. We also made the Inc. 5000 this year. So when I think about my journey, in many ways, this year is sort of an anchoring year in that it feels like in so many ways, we've not only gotten to where we want to be, but we're heading into even the next chapter. So it's kind of fun to go back and look. I spent my first 10 years working inside of corporate America. I worked in the global IT consulting industry. I worked in the energy industry, including nuclear energy and alternative energy and energy trading. It was a massive Fortune 500 energy company. I also worked in the defense sector. And in each one of those roles, I always worked directly for either the C-suite or the senior executives and had direct access to the C-suite. And was really interesting for my very first day in corporate America. And I was such a baby then, when I look back, my roles being so close to the C-suite, in one case being, 30 feet from the CEO's office on day one of my first corporate job, I was always buying and hiring for outside things. The CEO would walk over to me and say, hey, we need to bring in a speaker on how to be more productive, find us someone, bring that in, or, hey, we're going to now sponsor and, Phil Mickelson. So we're going to do some big events around him and go get us all of these things to support that. So over the course of those 10 years, I hired hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of outside experts and consultants and service providers and suppliers. Sometimes, I even hired for people to paint murals on walls or create, clay sculptures of some of our new technology in the defense space. I had to put massive radar systems on freight carriers to get over to the Paris Air Show. So like anything that you can possibly think of, I would have to find an outside expert or a vendor to provide it. And while I loved those projects, those meetings were, number one, painful. Whenever I met with those outside people, I was always having to sort of steer the ship where we need it to go. And then as time went on in my professional career, I started looking at how much we were paying these outside experts, these outside consultants. So about a decade in, I thought to myself, maybe I should just be one of them. I should just go be a consultant back to my clients because I could actually affect more change and affect more result from the outside. I'd have more freedom. I'd make more money. So I put my resignation in and I left my job. I started my own consulting company selling purely to corporate, landed some incredible brands that everybody knows as our clients, was loving it. Got asked to speak at a women's conference about, of all things, PR and getting media relations. And at that conference, no one wanted to hear about how to get media coverage. The only thing they wanted to hear about was how I was landing all of these corporate clients. And in fact, a couple of the people at the conference were pretty aggressive in following up with me and asking me to help them do that. And one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I'm mentoring people on how to land and work with amazing corporate clients. And we when we say corporate, that's a pretty big sphere: colleges, universities, mid-market, like the whole gamut of sort of B2B. And next thing you know, that business was born. And it, I love working with diverse suppliers and small business owners and consultants to help them be successful and to bring some sanity back to their process, some common sense back to their process. And the corporations, they often tap me to co-present with them. I co-present with AT&T and Kaiser Permanente and Comcast and all these brands because they really like the way that we approach it with that common sense. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. I'm a little bit of an accidental entrepreneur. I've definitely taken some wrong turns along the way. But this is where we are, I started the company in 2006. So a good 15 years in now.
I will say though, that your website is incredible. I love the old school feel to it and like the looks but modern. Whoever designed it did an incredible job with that. I just want to put that out there. Everyone should go check out your website and go check that. And
thank you for that. Well, I think I'm
a marketer, right? So these are the things I notice. So
thank you. No, I sincerely appreciate that because we put blood, sweat, and tears into that. We put it into the rebrand. So I have to give credit where credit is due. And so our branding company that we worked with to help us through the rebrand was Branding for the People. A lot of people out there know who Ree Perez is.
Good buddy of mine.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So it was, and Ree and I have known each other for a decade. Like we go way, way back. So really I always knew I wanted to work with Ree when I was ready to do it. And, we had some like really good back and forth discussions about what this brand was going to be, got heated at times in a really good way of like all these creative juices flowing. And that's where we ended up. And I think his team said we had like one of the most complicated websites they ever had to deal with.
Well, it looks great.
Thank you.
So let's talk about selling to corporate clients because I think that's an avenue most people don't even assume or think about. Or if they do think about it, they think, man, why would such a big client want to, like, what do they want to do with me? So first and foremost, what are the unique advantages of selling to corporate clients?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest one overall, just look, business is the pursuit of profit. That's what business is. And so when you look at the lifetime value of any quote unquote corporate client, it dwarfs any other type of client that's out there, with the only exception potentially being the federal government in the United States, which can be a great customer as well, though they're always squeezing on price. So revenue high, profit low. But there is no more valuable client to a small business owner than a corporate customer or a corporate client. Because once you get in and you work with them, so long as you structure everything right from the get-go and you use the right process to do that, and you bake certain things in and you deliver on your commitments, they will keep buying from you forever for the most part, unless you screw it up. So one, it's the lifetime value. And then there's all these sort of secondary benefits, which are crazy. Everyone likes to talk about authority today. People like to talk about, establish yourself as the leading authority. Look, the dirty little secret about authority is that 99 out of 100 of the ways you establish authority can actually all be purchased. You can buy your way onto a New York Times bestseller list by buying your books. You can buy off contributors to major publications and get featured in their columns. You can buy your way into Times Square. You can buy all of that. One thing you can't buy is a corporate client list. You can't buy that. They're either going to buy from you or they're not going to buy from you. So I think it's, one of the greatest ways to do that. And then impact is the other one. So you've got money, you've got authority, and then you have impact. So when you go into a corporation and you're a conscious business owner, your ripple effect is massive. It is the ultimate force multiplier. And so we like to think of our Bold House community as a bunch of Trojan horses, because if I can get, one of our clients is at the seat of every major automotive manufacturer on the planet, as well as all the tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. And she's talking to them about how they think about their businesses. And she is the go-to expert in her field. And, you don't have to be an automotive expert. She's kind of an anomaly, but she's shaping the automotive industry as a one-person business as they move to fully autonomous electric vehicles. Trust me, all of us, you're a father, I'm a mother, we want someone like her at that table with those leaders. So to me, it's about that impact piece, that force multiplier. It's about the revenue and the profit, and it's about the authority. I don't know of any more coveted clients that are out there.
I love that. So now I'm going to get a bit tactical with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Right. What are some tips that you have for the listeners who want to go that route now? And they sit there and say, well, what do? I just email AT&T and sit there and say, hey, I'm really good at what I do. I'd love to consult for you. So,
I mean, you could.
You sold us, but then how do you go about actually landing these clients?
So if you were starting at the very beginning, very, very, very beginning, the first thing I would do is I would take a solid week to read some articles coming out of places like Harvard Business Review, Industry Week, Gallup. If you want to work in the food and beverage space, go read. First, just start to read about these companies. Companies are just a bunch of people working together for a collective good. It's just a group of individuals. And so just to kind of understand what they care about and some of the challenges that they face in their organizations. But you can also just be observant, right? Because if you do call AT&T because you have a problem with your cell phone or, billing or an issue, you kind of get the sense, right, of knowing the problems, because as a consumer, you are ultimately the end benefactor, or the opposite of a benefactor of those problems, right? Because they show up, in customer service. I tell my clients,
well, you're a benefactor if you then get the deal.
Exactly. Then you're on it. Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely. You can also, I have my clients, I say, look, go read some subreddits out there of people. Go read glassdoor.com and some of the things that employees are complaining about, just to kind of dunk yourself into awareness. That's really step number one. And then step number two is to figure out what it is you're going to sell to these organizations. What is it that you're offering to them? I would say about 70% of the people that we work with are experts that are either in the people issues, the culture issues, the profitability, sales, marketing. We can teach you how to sell a commodity, paper clips or paper to corporate, but we tend to work with experts who are going in. So we've got to figure out where is that entry point for you so that it makes sense. The biggest issue people have isn't getting in front of decision makers. That we can solve. But if you do get in front of them, do they give a shit about what you're saying? Do they care? Right. So one of my favorite tactics is speaking. There's no better way than to go to a conference and present, or virtual or in person. We're huge fans of executive roundtables, which we teach people how to do. We're huge fans of virtual forums, and we're huge fans of strategic introductions. But before any of those things are going to work, we've also got to figure out, where is the entry point into that organization for you? Who exactly are you talking to, and why should they care? The sort of low hanging fruit things to sell tend to be training workshops, strategy labs, and keynotes. Those are some sort of, just to give people some ideas, going in and doing a strategy day with a group of leaders around a problem, doing a workshop for employees, doing an executive retreat, or doing a keynote to their top leaders. Those are some of the sort of low-hanging fruit places before you can do a larger consulting engagement. Those are some of your sort of baseline, what could I offer to these companies?
I'm just curious because I'd love to go even a step before that and hear your thoughts,
Yeah.
because I think the entry point may actually be even earlier with, there are so many people that I meet, right?
Mhm.
I do a lot of consulting. I have an agency, and there are people I meet who are really good at what they do. They have either imposter syndrome. They don't know
Hmm.
how to phrase what they do, or they think,
Yeah.
why me? Why am I an expert? How do
Yeah.
you, I know you work with so many of these people and help coach them in landing these corporate clients. How do you help people get out of that, I guess, that mindset or that holdback?
You have no idea how much I love that question. And it's two things that we do. One I can do right now and just remind everybody why they are so good for these clients, like why these organizations want to work with you. So number one, because we talk to senior leaders nonstop, the word we hear over and over and over again is responsiveness. Small business owners are so responsive to their needs. It doesn't take an act of God for you to roll up your sleeves and do something for them, to come in and jump in and work with them. And so they appreciate that. If you're a big corporation and you call up Accenture, that's like a 6-month contract negotiation to get something going. Like, small business owners can jump in. The second reason they really want you right now is, I'm sure everybody, you're living under a rock if you don't know about the Great Resignation. Everyone's leaving jobs right now, right? It's a huge issue, not just in the US, but in other parts of the world. Companies today are craving that entrepreneurial mindset, that entrepreneurial spirit. When they, like, in their eyes, they think that you are so brave and courageous that you have your own company. And they, like, people are always sort of intimidated by corporations. It's funny because most of them, the individuals that you'll deal with, are actually a little intimidated by you because you're out there. You're a good value because you don't have tons of overhead. So even when you're charging a premium for your services, it's still less than what another company is going to charge. And they have social responsibility. So there's an internal driver to buy from small business, to buy from women, to buy from minorities. So, like, the deck is really stacked in your favor that they want to work with you. So that's number one. How do you get over your own imposter syndrome? Once you realize, like, oh, wait a second, I'm looking at this all wrong. The fact that I've worked with other entrepreneurs and I've been able to get a result, they're going to see that as like, wow. But then what we often do is we go back and we look at someone's experience, their professional experience, and we start looking at all the places that they have generated results. And sometimes it's when they were in a job. We had someone once, she was so afraid to approach hospitals, even though that was really where her expertise was most relevant. And when we went through her LinkedIn, we found that about 10 years ago, she created, as an employee in a hospital system, she created an unbelievable training program for over 1,000 employees in that organization. And she kind of just brushed it off. We call it entrepreneurial amnesia. And so the first thing we do is look back and say, where have you done this? And then we make sure they understand just how the lens that the corporate people are going to see it through, if it's presented the right way. The last thing we do sometimes is make people go out to conferences. We had a client who was so afraid to approach a certain industry. So we made her go to that conference and sit through the sessions. And by 3:00 on day one, she called me and she's like, now I know why you wanted me here, because every single thing they're complaining about in this industry comes down to communications. And you knew I'm a communications expert, and I'm sitting in these sessions wanting to scream because I know how they can fix these problems. And so sometimes it's just people won't take the time to, and now with these virtual events and all these webinars, it's like, if you just show up to some of them and you start listening, you're going to get frustrated because you're like, I know how to solve these problems. So that's some of the stuff that we do to try to get people to understand, look, they do want to work with you and you have tremendous value to offer. And they're not afraid to work with small business owners. You're a good value for them. So they like that. Trust me, they like that. They like that.
I love that. And I love entrepreneurial amnesia. I've never heard that before, but I'm wondering also, like, how much of it is entrepreneurial amnesia versus, as entrepreneurs, we live in our own bubbles.
Yes.
right? So we're stuck in our own space. So I'll use the marketing space, for example. I assume everyone else sees the same marketing ads I've seen, sees all the gurus, knows all the big people in marketing. And then, I'll talk with family and friends. I'll be like, yeah, I spoke to this person. They're like, who's that? I'm like, he has 15 million followers on Instagram. He's a pretty big deal. They're like, never heard of him.
Right.
But we live in our own bubble, and we think that
Yep.
what we do isn't necessarily so special because everyone's doing that in our space. And we're actually not even the top in our space. We're actually maybe the little fish in our space. But then we look out, and it's something that I've been consciously trying to do for myself, even is like take a step back, because I'm so entrenched in work and my own business, and take a step back and look at like friends and family that aren't in touch with it, and kind of run things past them and see, would this work on them, and using them as outsiders versus like, because otherwise you're playing the comparison game way too much. And I think that's one of the biggest holdbacks for entrepreneurs, is that not necessarily just getting over our own imposter syndrome, but looking at what everyone else is doing and being like, man, they're better than me. Or why are they up on stage and I'm not? Why are they doing this and why am I not?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to unpack a couple of things that you said there. I mean, as far as the entrepreneurial amnesia goes, typically what we find on that front is most people have actually accomplished so much in their life, by the time they are an entrepreneur, that they really do forget to go back and think about, wow, when I started that first job, what was I responsible for doing? Or, oh yeah, 10 years ago, I forgot. One of the things I forgot that I did when I was in the defense industry, they put me in charge of creating a consortium amongst all the defense contractors so that I won't go into, it's somewhat, we don't need to go deep into that because it's arcane, but I had to bring all these major corporations together around this consortium. It was an insane project, and I had forgotten that I did it. And so you really do forget. The other thing, though, is people tend to qualify what they did in the past. So they'll say, yeah, but I was an employee when I did that. That doesn't count. Or, yeah, but I wasn't doing, yes, I launched X. I was a project manager of this, or I was in charge of this, or yes, I managed 100 people, but those people were in manufacturing and now I'm doing this other thing. So people start discounting sort of the fact that 90% of what they did is still applicable. And maybe there's a 5 to 10% little tweak or shift that has to happen. That goes on all the time. People think that because they did it when they were an employee, that clients would look down on that, when in fact, companies are like, oh, so you've been in my shoes. You understand what I'm up against. Perfect. So glad to hear it. So they do that. And then, and then as far as thinking that everybody knows everything, you completely hit the nail on the head. There even was a time when the sort of solo business, infopreneur world, online marketing business actually really was in a fishbowl, all talking to one another. What has happened over the last 3 to 5 years, is the lines are gone now. It's not even just blurred lines. People in corporate are starting their own side hustles or leaving to start. Companies are looking at all the things that people like Digital Marketer and others out there have created, and they're pulling those strategies into their business. Corporations are they're slower than us. So we're not seeing adoption yet on Clubhouse. A lot of them still don't really understand what that is, but they're all using podcasts now. They have podcasts that they use to communicate to their customers. They have podcasts that they use to communicate to their clients and then out to the public. But two of those audiences, you don't even know. You don't even know that companies have a podcast just to their employees or just to their customers. When LinkedIn launches its competitor to Clubhouse, we're going to see rapid adoption of that inside of companies. So it is blurred, but here's what's interesting. They never have enough time. So they're only ever getting done the bare minimum that they have to get done. So they don't have the bandwidth, and they can't keep up with the trends the way that those of us in this space constantly do. So what we hear from our clients over and over again, especially when they're first just getting started, they'll come back from an executive roundtable, or they'll come back from their first couple of corporate client engagements, and they'll just say, holy crap, They don't know anything. Like, I thought they would have known all of this, and they think that my basic models and methodologies are the greatest thing since sliced bread, because they just, they don't have the time. And they're just getting their work done. So yeah, it's kind of interesting when you walk in as an entrepreneur. I would say they probably know 30 to 40% of what you know. And the other 60% is why you're sitting at the table. And you wouldn't be sitting at the table. If they could solve it themselves, they would have solved it themselves. So
I mean,
yeah.
I see that all the time, right? Where
Yeah.
it's we in our own space, we hear everyone saying that type of thing. But then, again, using marketing example, going out and telling someone the most common sense thing about how to grow their business marketing, and they're like, "Oh, really?" And they thank you for, like, that's why one of the reasons why I got into consulting was because I would tell brands what to do, and they were like, okay, yeah, we know this. We know. And then you would speak to an individual entrepreneur and give them the most basic thing, and they looked at it as life changing. And I'm like, that's the feeling I want. That's
That
it.
happens in corporate constant. I'll give a very specific anecdote, because this might help people, if especially anyone who is working with corporate. We had a client just close a $40,000 contract, and it's just the gateway. It's just like the mini, it's not, I can't even call it phase one. It's like phase 0 of working with them is this gateway offering, 40K. And one of the ways that she closed it, she used our scripts to navigate the sales conversation, which was great. I'm happy about that. But she did something on top of that, that was awesome. Let's just say, let's stick. It isn't a podcast. So I'm going to pick something that's completely not what it is, so that I don't give anything away. But let's just say she was there to help them with a podcast or something. When they were thinking, the thing they wanted her help with was one thing. And they were thinking of using that one thing in only one way. Like, they were going to do this big project, or they are going to do this big project, and they're thinking, we need it, and we're going to use it in this one singular application. And so she's sitting there, and we always say, like, you have to go first, investing into the relationship. Like, you go first, give insight. Every time you meet with someone that's a decision maker, make that meeting so valuable for them that even if they don't buy from you, they just want to have another conversation with you. Right.
So I don't want to interrupt your flow, because I know you're answering a different question, but I find that's the hardest thing sometimes to do, because sometimes it just looks like you're overstepping. Like, how do you do that when meeting with a corporate leader without feeling like you're puffing out your chest and just pretending I feel like I need to show that I know a lot to this client, right, and that's how I give value.
Oh yeah, they hate that.
I never asked for your opinion. I never asked for your help. So I don't know why you're offering it.
Well, it's so interesting. So that's one of the tips, is that you actually should ask, believe it or not. Say, you're saying a lot of things right now that we do have significant experience in. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many ideas or thoughts. I know you guys are already in discussion, but a couple are coming up for me right now. May I share them with you? Honestly, the second you ask if you can share, if they give you permission, their subconscious also gave you permission. And so they're not going to walk out of that meeting thinking, oh man, look at him coming in here, banging his chest. And actually what she shared in this meeting was perfect, because she said to them, I love that you're thinking of doing this project. We'll say the podcast, right? We have a lot of experience doing this. Our clients are actually repurposing this in 5 to 7 other ways to get maximum value. May I share with you the way our clients are using this same thing 5 to 7 other ways? Their eyes lit up and they were like, yes, please. And so because she asked first and she rattled off all the ways the project could be repurposed. In the small business world, we repurpose everything, right? I think it's Gary Vee that's like, document, don't create. And then, his 100 pieces of content a day and like repurpose. Corporate doesn't necessarily know how to do all of that. So she basically said, here's how you can repurpose all of this. She asked permission first. They were so blown away by all the other ways that they were going to be able to use this investment that they were making with her firm. that she closed the deal in 2 weeks. It's done. And it's phase 0 of what's probably going to be a 3, 4, 5 phase engagement. So you got to ask permission, and you have to do it from a place of service, not trying to convince, not trying to sell, but like, have you thought about this? Would you like to know what other companies are doing? We have some insider secrets on that. Do you want to know one of them? So that's how you ask.
And what are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making when they go to either approach corporate clients in order to land them?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is thinking that online marketing and social media is how you do it. They don't have time to sit out there scrolling through LinkedIn, watching your video of you sitting in your car doing a LinkedIn live. Like, that's not going to affect anything. Thinking that you can change their readiness level. So with B2B clients, you're looking for the ready now and the ready soon prospects. You cannot drag an elephant to water. And so, don't try to drag the elephant to water. And then the third huge mistake, the one that, like, to me is just the sin you can't really recover from, because once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you're screwed. And that is not understanding how to drive the sales conversation the appropriate way. And I use drive very loosely here, because the last thing you want to do is a sales pitch and but just not even understanding like what steps should happen when you have a prospect and what the goal is of each of those conversations and how to move it forward. The dirty secret that I've been sharing for a decade plus, but is that corporate decision makers do not know how to have a conversation with you. They're not taught how to buy the invisible. They're not taught how to buy expertise. The only people in the company who are taught how to purchase are in supply chain or procurement. But unless you're selling paper clips, you're not talking to those people. So if you meet with the head of marketing, the chief marketing officer, the head of HR, the head of learning and development, the head of risk management, the head of strategy, they've never been taught how to have a conversation with you. So you just spent however long you spent to market yourself, to build your brand, to build your authority, to do your prospecting. You put every single thing you do in marketing is all designed to get you to that conversation. Everything is designed to we're in the business of creating conversations. You get to the conversation and you don't know how to have the conversation, then what was the point of the last 1, 2, 3, 10, 15 years of building your business? So that to me is like the sin that you cannot let happen.
Yeah, listen to you talk. I'm curious if this is an actual objection or something that people would just put in their own heads. Is that, let's say you approach a CMO in order to do business. At what point does it like come to where, am I overstepping? Like, why would they want to bring in a marketing person when that's their job? So if they bring them in, if they bring me in as a consultant, are they kind of admitting, like, you'll get people who may sit there and say, I don't want to bring in anyone, because then it may be like, why am I bringing in someone? I'm supposed to be the expert. I'm the CMO in this business. If I bring anyone, it makes it look like I don't know how to do my job.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid question. If you were bringing someone in to come up with the company's entire marketing strategy and make those priority decisions and run the budget and do all that. Yeah. I mean, in that case, why do you need the CMO? I mean, I think I would actually agree with that statement. The reason that companies bring in outside help is it always comes down to just a couple of really simple things. They bring you in because there's a specific problem that they're not sure. It's an issue that's come up. It isn't part of the day-to-day running of their business, but it's a new problem and they want an expert in that specific thing. If you look at a marketing team inside of companies, just keeping the ongoing things happening, that's a full-time job. So let's say they want to do something new. They want an expert in that thing. So they don't know how to solve the problem themselves, or 2, they don't have the time or the people to get it done. And that's really typically the first time that you go in, is almost always because they're like, we want to launch this new thing. We want fresh ideas. And our team is already doing 120% of their, most people have about, if you look at their bandwidth, they're working 20 to 30% overtime a week. So anything new that they want to do, they need an outside person for that, or anything special that they want to do, they need an outside person for that. So, or team. So yeah, I mean, I agree. You're not replacing yourself. Although I will tell you, I just got an email from someone. I hadn't talked to them in 20 years. God help me. We were on a beer league softball team 20 years ago. Right. And I was like, oh no, I'm the worst softball player on the planet. So, and he got a new role. He's in a new role. It's completely different than anything he's ever done. And he said, I watch you on LinkedIn. I know you have experts in your community. I want to hire somebody to come in and help me co-create our plan, because I'm doing something I've never done before. And I want to bring in an expert as a consultant as I formulate this new plan. The company knows that, that this is a new area for me, and I want to bring in that expert. So they do it all the time. They're busy. They're busy, and they just don't have specialized expertise. They have generalized expertise.
And I actually think it's arrogant to assume that you know everything and you could do everything yourself. Like if I had an employee that sat there and said, no, I never need to ask for help or look elsewhere for something, that would bother me.
It should bother you.
Yeah. I think everyone, I think the biggest mistake for a lot of businesses in terms of why they don't grow is that they don't know what they don't know. And
yeah. So the fish can't see the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fish can't see the water. And a lot of conscientious senior leaders know that, and they love that outside expertise, because they know that you're watching what everyone else is doing. And it's a shortcut for them, instead of them having to go do a market analysis and like try to figure out the trends and what everybody's doing and what the latest is. And also a lot of times they want that, what do you see that I can't see because my nose is too close to the bark? And it's really, honestly, only insecure leaders ever really have the worry that you vocalized. It's the insecure leaders that get like that. But any secure leader, they value that outside expertise and to have the extra arms and legs, to be perfectly honest.
So over a decade doing what you're doing, you've seen a lot of businesses grow and scale. Keeping with the theme of mistakes, I believe you learn way more from mistakes than asking you what you did right. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see businesses make when it comes to growth and scale?
Creating jobs for themselves, as opposed to building a team that can execute. I think most of us at some point in our business will walk around with our foot on our own throats, choking off the growth, right? And we twist ourselves in a knot to do that. But we just don't hire well, and and you don't have enough people to execute. So I think that's one. I think another thing that comes up for scale for a lot of folks is they don't understand the numbers in their business. They don't understand the financial data, days cash on hand, the length of your average sales cycle, your customer lifetime value. You're not looking at what is working to bring in the clients, even looking at the profitability of the programs or the services that you offer, and making sure that, the ones that you're investing growth in are the ones that are profitable and scalable, and really looking at
lack of measuring.
What's that?
They don't measure.
They don't measure. Yeah, they don't measure. And they don't understand their own financials. They can't read their own P&L statements.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I did financial communications. I was in charge of reporting our financials to the media every quarter when I was in the energy sector. You have to understand a balance sheet. You have to understand where to put your money. You have to have a good sense. You really have to learn your financials, I would say.
Yeah.
It's business. We're running a business.
It's crazy how many 7, 8 figure business owners I speak to, and they have no clue about their numbers. They don't
Right.
know what they should be measuring,
Right.
and it's crazy because they hit 7, 8 figures.
Right.
Right. Just imagine where they'd be if they actually put these things into place.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to change gears here for
Sure.
a second, and it's funny because every time I have a female guest on the show, I feel the need to ask this, right or wrong. But I think it's because it's been so hard to get female guests to come on. I guess, why do you think that is? Why do you think women are not as out there or putting themselves out there as men do? And I'll preface it with, like, we know it has nothing to do with talent. I know it has nothing to do with talent. I've seen some badass business women
Yeah.
who completely would overshadow any man if they spoke out. But I feel like I'm so happy that you came on the show. I'm happy when every woman comes on the show and start talking, because I'm a big champion. First of all, I also have a little daughter and I want her to be a badass too. So I guess you're in the space and you're female. I don't want to make assumptions of why. So I rather ask the question.
Yeah, I
And I hope it doesn't offend you, because
no, it doesn't. I love the question. It's actually one we talk, that I think about a lot. My team and we sometimes talk about it. I think it's a pretty messy, layered cake of things. I think, it's a little bit of nature plus nurture, right? I think there's a little bit of both going on, to be honest, as with most things. One, on the sort of nature side of things, women tend to be, and anthropologists explain this much better than me. But from an anthropological perspective, women tend to really care about the collective, if that makes sense. And so women are really cruel starting around 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Women are very cruel to other women at that point who stand out. And I speak from experience on that because I did stand out at that point in my life. And I was so bullied that, they had a club, early marketing. They had a club, Kids Against Angelique Rewers. It had a logo, car. And they would have meetings and they wore buttons. And essentially they had a schedule of who was going to bully me at each class and in between the classes as the bell would ring, and we would, and it went on for years. It was a pretty dark period of my life. And a lot of girls have a story like that. And so we have to start very young at sort of rewiring the way that girls learn to interact with one another. Still to this day, if I go speak at a conference, men will come up to me, and I'm making a generalization here, but I think we're making generalizations in this question. Men will often come up to me and say, that was such a great talk. When you said this, it really made me think. And then I'll get a woman come up behind him and say, I really think your hair is too long to be professional. Your shoes offended me. That was my favorite. Your shoes offended me. It's a very strange dynamic. And I think women often are afraid to stand out because it's where the criticism happens. And so, starting from a young age, we're afraid to be the tallest nail because it is the one that gets the hammer. I was lucky enough that my drive was so strong that I said, screw it, and I'm going to go out there. Now, I will tell you, the other side of it is we do sometimes have trouble kind of breaking in. I was in I don't even like to call it a mastermind. It was sort of this one-day gathering done virtually that a good friend of mine pulled together. And they broke us up at one point into little Zoom rooms. You can do the breakout rooms. And I was put into a room with 3 men. And we started to talk, and we were all sort of sharing. And then before you know it, the 3 of them right in front of me started having their own conversation about things and excluded me from the conversation. And it was really a fascinating thing. I decided to kind of watch how it was going to play out because I saw it happen. And I could have tried to reinsert myself into the conversation, but I was kind of at this point more of an observer of if they would even realize what they had done in the dynamics of the conversation. And so I think you have a pretty messy situation for all of us to work through. I put a lot of females on my faculty. I put a lot of females on my stages. And I do that because I want to create, the platform to do it. But we have an issue dating way back to grade school, all the way up. And then even in our entrepreneurial communities, the next time you're at a gathering and, people start having business conversations, we talked about a conference that you were recently at, the next time that you go, if business conversations start to happen, try to see who's excluded and who's included in the conversations. And when you become aware of it, then you start realizing just how often it happens. So that was a long-winded conversation or long-winded response, but I think there's a lot baked into the issue.
No, and I love the way you put it. And again, I apologize. We even need to make this a conversation.
I think it's good that we do, though. Like, thank you for asking, because that's the only way we're going to change it.
But another thing you talked about is that women bring a unique set of talents and power to business. I'd love to give you the opportunity to expand on that and really go a little bit deeper in what those unique talents and I guess power are.
Well, if we want to get a little sort of metaphysical, if you look at some of the universal laws, the thing is that we actually do need both the male and the female energy, in the universe. Like it's in everything in nature. And I think when we look at trying to make things whole, we first and foremost, we can't exclude women. In fact, I'm on a subcommittee for the United Nations, and the goal is to empower 1,000 women in war-torn parts of the world to have a seat at the table as their countries deal with reconstruction and recovery. Because even outside of business, just in the most basic needs of societies, after there has been, tremendous volatility, women's voices aren't at that table. And so I'm on a committee that's goal is to raise as much money as possible for the UN's work around that. I think the other reason that we need women's voices is because we have a different shared experience as females than men have. And so just as I can't see the world through your lens, you can't see the world through my lens. And so it's as basic as the fact that cars, airplanes, office chairs are not designed for us. They're, the world is not for us. The office temperature is literally not designed for us. We are still, it's really, I keep making this joke about as we return to the office and companies talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. Maybe they could start the return to the office by finding a temperature that neither women or men are happy with. It's somewhere in the middle, So I think that we need to make sure we're seeing the world through multiple lenses and the gender lens. And frankly, we can't make it, it should not also be male, female either, right? Like it's really important that we're saying, and what about those who are non-binary, right? Who don't identify with either. I almost lost it about 2 or 3 months ago. I had to be really careful because I can't throw this corporation under the bus here, but I was invited to a very exclusive conversation with some major corporations talking about diversity inside the companies. And this one corporation, a Fortune 100, has made a significant dent in more women in leadership. But when they were showing the pie charts, they divided the pie charts into pink and blue. Like those were the choices that they made on the slide deck, was pink and blue. And I was sort of like, I can't believe that's what I'm looking at right now. And oh, by the way, what about those who don't identify with either gender? What about that? So I think that, yeah, I think we have a long way to go on this. And hopefully we'll start to see much more change over the next decade.
Well, I want to say, I love how you put everything. And I want to say thank you for your time, because you're an incredible entrepreneur. I'm gonna throw this question out there. Any regrets that stand out to you along your entrepreneurial journey? If you could go back and redo.
Yes, many. I know. I asked Richard Branson when I was in Africa with him, what his regret, and he said he really doesn't have any. He thinks everything happens for a reason, and I completely agree with that perspective. But I'm going to tell you,
So do I. But I have a lot of things that I would love to go back and redo.
Yeah, I do too. So I was like, yeah, I appreciate the sentiment of that. And also I have regrets. My regret was, because I'm an intelligent person, I kept thinking I could figure certain things out on my own, because I can figure out a calculus problem. I can figure out a physics problem. I can figure out all these problems. So I really thought around the riddle of growing and scaling a company that I could figure it out, because I am intelligent. So my biggest regret is not getting more help in my business much earlier on, and recognizing that running a business is upside down world. The things we're taught in school, the things we're taught in jobs, the things we're taught by our families are not the right strategies, mindsets, lenses to look at business through. And I should have spent the first 3 to 5 years in as much mentoring, as much consulting, coaching, learning as I possibly could, instead of letting my damn ego get in the way and think that just because I'm intelligent, I can figure it out on my own. Now I'm smart enough that when I want to rebrand, I go to the best in the rebrand. I went to Branding for the People. When it comes to media, I went to Super Connector Media. It's like, go to the experts who know their thing, stop being cheap, don't bargain with your own success, and get the help that you need from the people who have a track record and that you can trust to help you. So yeah, I have a lot of regrets. Those first 5 years, I could have grown so much faster if I would have just gotten some damn help.
Perfectly said. Something I totally agree with and preach all the time. And a perfect segue that for the listeners who want to reach out to you and learn more and ask you the questions, how can they find you?
Yeah, the best thing to do is head to our website, Bold House, which is BOLDHAUS.com. There's a really cool proposal template there. Plus all my social media links are there. But I'm also the only Angelique Rewers that you're going to find on Clubhouse, on Instagram, and on Twitter, because I'm one of only 2 on the planet with that name. So if you find Angelique Rewers in any of those places, 9 times out of 10, it's me.
Love it. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want, check out our most recent video over here. And this one is the one YouTube thinks you'll like. But if you really enjoyed watching, please do me a favor, like and subscribe over here. Thank you so much.